All right, it's time to see if we are elite enough to hit these golf clubs. Man, that was so cliche. Welcome back to the Golf Shop. Jim McCleary here, and this is where we talk about golf club repairs, reviews, and fittings, all so your scores will go low. If you would, like, subscribe, hit that stuff across the bottom so the more of this information gets out. If you would, like, subscribe again, and also join us on the live stream that we have on Mondays. It's called What's in My Drawers Golf Talk. We're talking with folks from around the world about golf equipment and some of the same topics. So join us, you'll have a good time. It's at 5:30 Eastern, 5:30 Eastern, or 17:30 for those of you that do military time. All right, yes, I know it's corny, the Elyte Golf Club. That's what Callaway has put out on their new set of irons. Now, what do I think about these things? I think cosmetically these things are pretty damn cool, okay? The Paradigm and the Paradigm Smoke AI, those were neat, but these look like golf clubs again. All right, I mean, there's no color, it's just a nice steel look. I mean, to me, that's what a golf club needs to look like. I don't need a color, I don't need a big, tie-dye looking thing to get my attention. What I like is something that looks clean, something that looks mean, and something that looks like it's going to hit the ball as well as I need it to, okay? So let's talk about this one. The Elyte comes in 4 different flavors. One is the standard, right? You're going to see that one. One is the X model, the Elyte X. Here we go. Let me not cover it up so much. The Elyte X. All right. Another one is the, let's get the last one. Then the Elyte High Launch. And then the Elyte Fast Max. So what's the difference of all these? Well, let's work our way backwards. The Fast Max, all right? The Fast Max is exactly what it sounds like. It is to maximize forgiveness for those who have slower swing speeds to try and make the ball go faster. All right, now what does it mean by that? So if let's say you're either a younger player or even an older player, this is something that might be in your staple. The head is slightly lighter. I won't say super light, but just slightly lighter. The shafts that you can put in them are slightly lighter, and the grips are slightly lighter. So everything is lighter so that you can generate a little bit more club head speed, i.e. turn that into distance, okay? Now we're going to talk about specifications here in just a little bit. The next one is the High Launch. The High Launch is exactly what it sounds like. The High Launch is a little bit weaker. In fact, the Fast Max and the High Launch have literally the same lofts. Why is that? Well, in order to get the ball up in the air and get the greatest amount of distance, you're going to need something a hair weaker in order to get it up there. Now, when I first heard this concept, I thought, wow, this is just totally backwards. However, since I first got these, I have fit this High Launch into several people's bags, and it is significantly different in the distance. All right, yeah, you go, well, they're so strong. And that's the problem. They start getting so strong that they don't get enough air time, and when they hit, in the summertime, or if you live in Florida, that could be a good thing. Up here in the mountain area, where you have to get it in the air, you have to carry hazards, you have to carry water, you have to carry sand that you may not be able to do with a normal that you can do with the High Launch club, okay? Now, the other two, going back, here's the X model and what we'll call the standard Elyte. So the X model is a stronger version of the previous two, and what this one is a draw bias. All right, we'll call it that. This one is built like this guy, only it has a lot more offset in it, all right? And it is a noticeable amount of offset. The other part is it has a slightly wider sole, okay? So what this one would be for, I can only imagine, would be It's not a very workable club, but it is a club to help you not push the ball away, so to help prevent some of that slice. For those guys that take a monster divot or chopping wood when they go to hit, something like this, and still when you make a mistake, you can still get out there. This happens to be the strongest club in all these fours, which is kind of weird, by 1 degree. Okay, when I say weak and strong, we're talking in 1 and 2 degrees. So we'll get that in a minute. The standard, and quite possibly my favorite, is far from a looks. It has that hollow body particular look, although it's not, sort of. It has it doesn't have a big gaping cavity like, say, the X model or even the others. This one, it looks like it's almost filled, okay? And then it has, Callaway has been known for a very thick top line. So much so in the Bertha, the older Berthas, they were ridiculously fat. They figured out how to trim these things down. They put this paint on it, they rounded the edges, and it looks like a player's type club. I mean, it's really, really nice. It has the smallest sole of all the 4 models. It has the least amount of offset of the 4 models, and is the second strongest of the 4 models. All right, so I've been telling you about that. We're going to go with 5 iron and pitching wedge lofts. These things are, you could call them jacked, okay? The 5 iron in the standard model, all right, is a 22 degree 5 iron. A tradition, just to kind of give you a reference point, what we call the new traditional modern lofts is around 27. So this thing is a full club and some change stronger, okay? Man, and then you're like, well, how do you get it in the air? We'll talk about that in a minute. The X model is 21. Now, the pitching wedge is fun. It's 22 and 42. A 42 degree pitching wedge. That is significant. Because it's so strong, there are 2 additional wedges in the set, an A wedge and a G wedge, and they'll have lofts on them so you don't mistake them. Smart play, because there's just too much gap between that and the sand wedge. The X model, 21 and 41. All right, that's significant. That's like a 4 iron, maybe even a 3. And of course, it has its offset in the wider sole. And why an extra degree? I only imagine because of the offset. If you're getting that thing closed, you probably need a little bit more, a little bit less loft, maybe. I don't know. But it's stronger. Now, the high launch and the fast max are both the same at 23 and 43. Okay. Now you would think, well, it's only a degree from the other one, Jim. Does it make a difference? The answer is yes, it does. It's scary how much difference that makes. Now again, this one has a slightly wider sole than the standard model, and probably very close to the X model, where the Fast Max is pretty much just a hair wider, Now, so those are what the 3 models. Now, they all sport what's called the speed frame, okay? The speed frame is one kind of, we'll call it a unibody type construction from the inside out. Now, the face is an AI face, and it's spouting the A10X face, where you don't lose a lot of ball speed when you hit it other than in the direct center. I'm sure that they're making up for some of that stuff, and it also has some cup face technology in it. They all have it. All right. They also all have some weight that gets under the bottom, which is a typical construction makeup for most iron manufacturers with strong lofts. You put a bunch of weight down here below the equator of the ball, and in order to get that launch angle. Now the other part is they have this. There's a we'll call it, I'm sure it's a urethane of some variety that goes in here to help reduce the vibration and the sound in order to help promote the feel. Okay, they all sport that. All right, so the question is, which one's for you, right? They'll say swing weights are going to be in a certain range, and that's because of the different shafts that they offer. Now, right now in the graphite is the Denali gray, which is really kind of a nice shaft. They have a new shaft in steel. It's the Vector steel. It comes in 80 and 90 grams. Still very nice. Plus a plethora of aftermarket shafts, of which you'll see here in just a little minute. So the other part of this, when you go to a fitting, this is a new fitting system for Callaway. Instead of getting several different heads that are different lie angles and whatnot, that the shaft comes with cogs that you can use, and you can adjust lie angle and loft. So you can get a better fitting experience if the person knows how to use these cogs. Okay, I had to talk to a friend to get a new metric or matrix of it. I did my own, and I turns out it matched up, so good for me. Good for me. Alrighty, so the real question is, you know, we talked to Mike Verska when we were at the PGA show, and this is what he had to say about this stuff. Now we're looking at, the rep brought the Elite iron, and I'm really quite excited about this one, if nothing else, just for the mere cosmetics of it all.
Yeah, I'm going to go on record literally here. I think obviously Callaway does great in all categories. You know, we're #1 in so many things, but I really think 2025 is going to be a huge year in irons because of the Elite iron. You know, it really all starts, we call this speed frame construction. It allows us to use some materials and thicknesses, again, getting that 10x AI face. You know, we can stiffen the top line in the right way and still have the face flex for really great distance, again, dialing in that dispersion. We still have urethane microspheres. When people hit this, they're shocked it's not forged. I'm just going to be upright. This is not a forged golf club, but from a sound and feel perspective, you're going to think it is. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but some things we've done with our sole, this new tri-sole, a little bit of what maybe called a blunt leading edge or pre-worn leading edge. The reaction from, you know, down from our tour players all the way through, super excited about the overall performance of this thing. A really big step up. And again, the cosmetics of it, all 4 models, the Elite, Elite X, Elite HL, a little bit higher launching, as well as a Max Fast version. So, you know, really an iron for everybody, and in a beautiful package at a great price point with amazing technology. We're excited about the drivers. We have great fairway woods. We continue to do amazing things with hybrids, new adjustability, which are going to help you fit and people get fit into them.
We saw that.
But the irons, everything's going to be a big year, but I'm really excited about what the Elite irons are going to do.
All right, so Mike is a longtime friend. Thank you very much, Mike. It was a tremendous thing for you to take your time and help explain this to everybody else. I appreciate it. And we're going to use some more of his insights when we go do the drivers. Now, the only other part is that we've got to hit him. All right, this is where we find out whether or not I'm elite enough to swing these golf clubs or not. So as they lined up, this is pretty much how they should have shaken out. You have the Elite X, and the Elite High Launch. I did not do the Fast Max for the mere fact that it just wasn't in my wheelhouse, and I didn't want to give it any bad press. It certainly does fit a certain person. That person is not me. All right, so let's go over and let's do a little quick check here. So here's what we got to look at when we talk about distances. We're going to talk about swing speed. So 84.6, 85, a mile per hour. That, you know, that's not very much, but when we start talking about that, that's 1.5 miles. When you start comparing low to the top, you know, that can contribute to maybe a handful of yards, but is it this many? The answer would be no, because the second category that we got to look for is how well we hit it. And if we look at here, you know, when you hit an iron into the 130s, mid or upper 130s, you're actually hitting the ball very well. And in the last two, in the Elite X and the Elite, I hit very, very well. And in the High Launch, I just hit it well. All right. We're going to keep going backwards in the spin rates, because we see that the Elite High Launch, it has a weaker loft. We're going to see that it's going to spin a little bit more. And if we see that, the funny part here is, in comparison, the Elite X actually should have spun a little bit less than the actual Elite, but in this particular case, the way I was coming through it, it got a little bit more. But as you see, it just progressively got a little bit less. All right, so what really happened here? The Elite, on the average, 176, 178. The Elite X, 175, 176, so within a yard or 2 yards. And then the High Launch was in that 10-yard gapping range. And we'll go show you, and we're going to figure out why that is right now. All righty, so if we look at the Elite, you see a whole bunch of stuff in the 170s, and the very last one I tagged to 180, which was kind of nice. Then you get into the Elite X, a bunch of 170s, and one in the just below that, but one there, and then one almost to 180, not too bad. Then we get into the high launch, and all of a sudden we're starting to see this. The 150s, swing speed's there's decent, just not getting it out there the way we wanted to, but we had 1, 2, 3 of those where at the end I hit one pretty good, but that was it. Found the middle of the club, so just about the way that it looked. All right, so if we looked at where they landed and we say, okay, so the green is the high launch, the red is the X model, and then the Elite, what we'll call standard, is the blue. So if we go and look at it singularly, right here is where this is all at. So I left this one in there. That was that 170 shot. In reality, if we take this one out, that's pretty much in the middle, right? That's not a bad shot at all. If we go back to the X model, I'm into the middle except for 3 pulls, and those are pretty tight. This is where I was expecting them all to go based on the offset, but that got right in there. And then when we get to the Elite Standard, it's obvious that the cluster is much more packed tight. It didn't have the mistakes like I had in the other one. All right, if you wanted to see a more of a motion capture kind of setup, there's what the Elite Standard looked like, and you're seeing the nice high flights coming out of the air. So it's got some stopping power. If we look at the Elite X, and we take off on that one, and again you see the ones that were down the middle, and then the cluster that was off to the side, not nearly as tight, but some pretty good shots. And then if we look at the high launch, and that thing's all over the map, and even got some fades going on that one. It was just a fan method, not a very good shot for me. Alrighty, so the last bit of the review again, and that the Elite went a little bit further, 2 yards total, than the one before it, and then the one before that about 12 yards, all because of how well we hit it and contributed to swing speed. All right, so let's go back and talk some more about it. So the everything turned out like it should have, right? I didn't hit the fast max because it was probably going to be a little bit too light, and I didn't want to give it literally. It just wasn't going to be for me. Okay, so what did we see? Well, we saw that the high launch went the shortest, surprisingly so for only a degree or two, but it was just a matter of me not hitting it as well. It has a different look at address, I will say that. And it could be because of maybe, say, the wider sole makes you set it in a different way. And so what we were doing is, comparing to see where they were going. So it went pretty straight. It just went pretty short in comparison, right? A 160-ish 7-iron, not too bad. However, the other two, pretty nice, right? The X model, which I thought I would just hook completely off the planet because all the offset really, I was to my right, but my pattern was a little wider. And again, I think that was particularly just because of the wider sole. And then finally we had the standard model, of which I just lit that thing up. At least it felt good. I hit a very nice tight pattern, and at the very end I tagged one out past 180 with a 7-iron. That's pretty big for me. And so we got out there. The one thing I did not cover for you guys in that is that this thing is, all 4 of the models sport a tri-sole design, which the leading edge is got this scoop cut out of it so that it's not a shovel, and then the back end is tapered off so that you have very, very good turf interaction. So they all have that one. However, with the sole widths the way they are, depending on how you engage the turf, could be how you get through the golf club. So what I suggest is, when you're going to go buy these, because it's a significant, it's a significant cost, go get fit, right? Go get fit so that you can get the right shaft, the right head, the right lie, the right grip, the right length, all those different things that make golf fun for you, right? That's what you want. And a fitting is the best way to do it. You have no idea the things that you could pick up during the fitting. At least that's what we do, right? So again, if you like what you saw, hit that like and subscribe button down below, and join us on Mondays for the live stream. And as always, let's see your scores go low.